let's talk a little bit about capacity. And you've heard me, if you've listened to me before, you've heard me and anybody else that works in the field of HOP and New View say something like safety's not the absence of incidents, it's the presence of capacity. Um, so let's talk about what that means, and then how do we achieve it? How do we measure it? How do we sustain it? Okay. So you probably noticed I'm not in my bar where I usually do these videos. I'm in my garage and I'm standing over my table saw. One of my hobbies is woodworking. And this saw is one of my most commonly used tools. And this type of saw, a table saw, is also one of the most dangerous tools in a woodworking shop. It's responsible for more emergency room visits than almost any other tool. And you might see why as I go on. I've owned table saws for more than 30 years, and I've never been injured working with one. So I've got more than 11,000 days injury-free working on a table saw. But that doesn't mean I won't do something today that could get me seriously injured. Okay, that just means in the past, nothing's happened. And defining safety by the absence of incidents is like driving and looking through your rearview mirror. You're looking at what's behind you, not what's right in front of you. So those 11,000 days injury-free don't mean I'm not going to get hurt today. The way I ensure that I won't get hurt today is by creating capacity. And how do we do that? Well, I'm going to tell you one way we don't do that. One way we don't do that is with rules and policies and procedures. This saw comes with a rule book, a policy, a procedure. It's, great big thing, and it's got all kinds of information in it. And right at the front of it, it's got a whole bunch of warnings about what to do and what not to do in order to operate the saw safely. And a lot of organizations I know of, they rely really, really heavily on procedures and rules and policies and standards as things that keep their workers safe. And the way I look at this is just paper. It's pieces of paper in a little binder. That's all it is. So this is not what I rely on to keep me safe. What I rely on to create capacity in order to operate this saw safely are effective controls. So what are controls? Control, I like the ICMM definition, International Council of Mining and Metals. They define controls as acts, objects, or systems that of themselves will prevent or mitigate the event. They're measurable, specifiable, and auditable. So, acts, something I do. Objects, an engineered device that does its job without me having to do anything. And a system, a combination of an action and a device. And I'll give you some examples here in a minute. Rules, policies, procedures, audits, those aren't controls. It's acts, objects, and systems. And one of the things we see in rules, and I see it in that rule book, it'll say things like keep the blade guard in place whenever possible, use a push stick whenever needed. Okay, well, that means that it's up to me, and that's not measurable, specifiable, and auditable. So let's talk about how I create capacity in order to operate this saw effectively. Now, one of the things that this saw comes with is this blade guard right here. And that blade guard, if it's installed properly, does a pretty good job of keeping my hands away from the blade without me having to do anything. It's an object, okay? It's there, it's installed on the saw properly and maintained. It does a pretty good job. The problem is, there are a lot of things I do on this saw where I can't use the blade guard. It gets in the way. It doesn't allow me to make the cut I'm trying to make. So me and most everybody that owns a table saw ends up removing that. Well, now we're not on the black line anymore. We're on the blue line. We're not working the way it's imagined. We're working the way it's done. Okay? So how do I create capacity now in order to keep operating this saw safely? So, acts, objects, and system. Acts, I keep my hand away from the blade, but that's not measurable, specifiable, and auditable. So what my rule is, my hand never goes into the red part of this plate that's next to the blade. My hand always stays outside of that red part. That's an action. that's measurable, specifiable, and auditable, right? And then there's this system, this push stick. So this is a combination of an action. I have to pick it up, grab it, decide to use it properly, and a device, the stick itself. And so the rule for this is whenever my fence is on that red plate, I use a push stick to push the wood through the blade. So that's measurable, specifiable, and auditable. And then finally, this saw comes with a system. I don't plug products, but you can see the brand name on my fence. This saw comes with a system built into it, an engineered object built into it that is touch detection. If my hand or any part of my body touches that blade, it instantly stops spinning and drops below the table. So I get a little scratch instead of losing part of my hand. That object, that engineered object, does its job without me having to do anything. It's on whenever the saw is on. It's very easy to do the right thing and very hard to do the wrong thing. It's measurable, specifiable, and auditable. It performs a self-test every time I turn it on, and I can manually verify that test before I start the blade spinning. So that's how we guarantee, that's how we create, monitor, measure, sustain capacity in order to be able to work safely. Acts, objects, and systems that of themselves will prevent or mitigate the event. They're measurable, they're specifiable, and they're auditable. It's not the absence of incidents. Those 11,000 days in the past are not what keeps me safe today. Thanks.